Here's Historic Home Roundup. I'm Annie Levinsky. I'm the Executive Director of Historic Denver. And for anyone on the call who isn't familiar, we are the local nonprofit historic preservation advocacy and resource organization. We are also a historic homeowner. We own the Molly Brown House Museum at 1340 Pennsylvania. So we've done our fair share of house projects as well, and always love learning a little bit more about how we can take care of the buildings that we all love so much. As a reminder, this is a two-part series this year as we begin to sort of get back into the swing of in-person events. So we have this evening's talk tonight on Zoom, and then tomorrow morning we have the in-person maintenance tour in Curtis Park. So for anyone who's planning to join, the meeting place for that is 2830 Lawrence at the Centro San Juan Diego. I'll plop that into the chat in case you don't have the email handy tomorrow. And they've graciously allowed us to use the parking lot there at the historic building. So that then Melanie Short, an architect, a local architect with tons of historic preservation experience, will walk the group around and highlight several common maintenance issues on some of the homes in the Curtis Park Historic District. And it's always really helpful to see those kinds of issues in person and hear a little bit about how to address them. There are a few thank yous that we want to make sure we give tonight. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Rezdox, for everything and for their support this evening. And we're going to hear a little bit more about the services that they provide later in the evening, as well as tomorrow. So thank you so much. We also want to thank all the voters of the SCFD, the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, for funding Historic Denver and the Molly Brown House with grants from several of the counties in the metro area. And Allison will be launching a poll to determine what SCFD county you are coming from or where you live, because it is something that we report to them about all of our programs. I wanted to just briefly mention Historic Denver does have resources for historic building owners on our website. Again, that's something I'll put in the chat, but we have resources about common issues, window repair, masonry repair, what to do with your flagstone sidewalks and what the options are for repairing those or making them functional for another decade or 10, as many of them have been. So our website is a great place to go. You're always also welcome to contact our office with questions or for referrals to contractors. We do have a contractor resource list that we provide to all of our members. And we encourage you, if you're not already, to become a member of Historic Denver. It's very reasonable, low cost, and you get access to additional members only events, tours, and emails with great content. And you're helping support our work in saving places all across Denver. So we hope that you will consider doing that. The outline for our evening this evening, we have three parts. We're first going to hear about accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, or some people call them granny flats, and building those in historic districts. Then we'll hear a homeowner talk about the process of adding an addition to their home in a historic district. And the third part of our session will be Ask an Expert. And we will divide into even smaller groups for that and rotate between 3 experts so that you can ask specific questions that you may have about your house. So you can start thinking about those questions now. Our experts are in masonry, in architecture and design, as well as just general historic house research and design questions. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to hand this off to my colleague Allison so that she can introduce our first speaker, and she will be our MC. And Allison is our Director of Public Programs and Outreach.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. So yes, we are ready to roll into our first session. And I did put a question in the chat if you want to share where you're logging in from. We will use the chat for questions throughout. So if you have a question while our first speaker is talking, feel free to park it there. And then we'll also have a designated spot at the end where I can either read her questions to you, or you can unmute yourself and ask them directly if you'd like. So our first session this evening is going to be led by Sarah Senderhauf. She works for L&D Construction. She grew up in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in Southern Colorado and was born into a real estate family. She's been a licensed realtor in Colorado for over 16 years and has worked with Connor Murphy Homes from 2013 to 2016, assisting clients through the construction process from design through completion. Then she joined L&D Construction in 2016 and has been specializing in ADU construction ever since. Sarah is a zoning expert and helps clients navigate the red tape with the city of Denver, especially in its historic district. So I think she has a lot of very helpful information for folks on this call. So Sarah, if you want to go ahead and start to share your screen, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Allison. Is my screen coming through there?
Yes, I see it. So hopefully everybody does,
Okay.
but I can see it well.
One little tech question here. Can I shut the poll? Or am I gonna
Oh, is it not shut? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I closed it.
Maybe it's just on the screen. I
Okay,
don't-
but yes, close. Please feel free. If it's still up on anyone's screen, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Well,
Close it where we finished.
all right, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Allison. Thanks for helping me get the tech issues out of the way there before we get started. As Allison said, I'm Sarah Senderhauf with L&D Construction, and I've been specializing in ADU construction for coming up on 6 years, and built about 30 ADUs in Denver, not only in the historical district, but in other areas of Denver as well. And so we're very passionate about them. We're excited. We think that they're a great opportunity for people to get into, look at some different housing options and really invest in their property. So just a couple things that I'm going to touch on tonight. So just what is an ADU? I think that that term is starting to be used a lot more in Denver than it was 6 years ago, which I'm really excited about. Why do people build ADUs? I'm going to touch on building in historical districts, some zoning issues or zoning that you have to go through. And why are ADUs important? And then we're going to have some time for some Q&A as well. So as was mentioned earlier, you can put questions in the chat if you'd like, if there's anything that comes up as I'm going through here. So what is an ADU? ADUs go by a lot of different names. The term that the city uses is accessory dwelling units, but they're more commonly known as, carriage houses, garage apartments, laneway homes. We tend to see laneway homes maybe more up in the north in Canada, in that area, alley flats, garden suites, granny flats, but the term that the city uses is accessory dwelling units. I think the most common term that we really hear around Denver when people don't know what I'm talking about when I say ADU is garage apartments. So I just want to take a look here at different types of ADUs. So we can have an interior ADU that's shown here in blue. So maybe it's an attic conversion. Maybe somebody converts the basement of their house to an ADU. We do have some of these in Denver. We haven't seen a ton of them. I think that we will continue to see more. The Denver City Council just had a large text amendment bundle that they just recently adopted, where they got a little bit more clarification around attached ADU. So I'm hopeful that we'll start seeing more of those in the Denver area, because really it is going to be the most cost-effective way to add an ADU and additional housing onto the house. There's also an attached ADU where you can see here in the blue, maybe it's just an addition onto your house. And then also there's detached ADUs. And that is the majority of what our company has been building, and probably the majority of really what I see in Denver. I think that there's a couple pieces with that. A lot of people have an older garage that maybe they still want to park in and have some storage space, but then add some additional living space up above. And I think in Denver, people aren't ready to get rid of their garage space. So I think that that's why we see a lot of the detached and garage apartments in the Denver area. So just this is a rendering that we did of a project, just showing again where single family home up front and then the detached ADU in the back. Here's just another example of an attached ADU. This was a project that we went through zoning a couple of years ago, wanting to do an attached ADU really to get the cost down. And at that time we were denied by the city. But if we were to build that today, as of July 1st this year, this is an option that would work. So I think that we have been seeing some really good changes with ADU zoning. So just showing you a couple more examples here. I think that one of the things that ADUs really do is that they do help to really activate our alleys. And as you can see by these two top pictures here, just having the light, somebody living on the alley, I think that it does activate the alleys in a positive way, making our alleys more, a safer space to be. This is an ADU that we did on Marion Street. And I think this was actually on the cover of the Historic Denver newspaper a few years ago. But I think it's a nice looking ADU right on 26th and Marion. So why do people build ADUs? We have a lot of people who will use these for rental income, whether it's a short-term rental or maybe a long-term rental. They are pricey to build. So I do have quite a few clients that maybe initially use it as a short-term rental, get tired of changing the sheets all the time, and then turn it over to a long-term rental. So that additional rental income is definitely a good option for people that are thinking about building these. I think that it does offer one solution for affordable housing in Denver. It's definitely not a huge piece of the affordable housing issues that we have in Denver, but I think that this is one area where we can have more affordable housing for people to live in. I think that ADUs are not very disruptive to the neighborhood. Oftentimes, in order to see an ADU, you need to be walking down the alley or driving down the alley. If you're walking around, just on the front streets, you usually don't even see the ADU in the back. So it is very gentle density, really, is what ADUs offer. I think that they offer a lot of flexibility, aging parents to live in. Again, the rental income, possibly boomerang kids coming back. And then through this COVID pandemic, we have been seeing people thinking about the space a little bit different as far as, maybe they need a place for a home office or maybe a home gym, or they do want their parents or their family closer. So I think that all of these options for ADUs are a really good option for people. So taking a look at zoning, so as far as like the landmark historical districts go, I've listed a few areas here where ADUs are allowed in these zone districts: Curtis Park, Potter Highlands, Baker, Wyman, Alamo, Placida, excuse me. All areas where you can build ADUs. The zoning does allow for it. Now, what I have found with Landmark is that they are very supportive of, having these ADUs in the landmark districts. And ADUs or carriage homes were permitted in the city of Denver prior to 1950. And then from 1950 to 2010, ADUs were not allowed. In 2010, we had zoning changes come into place that started allowing for ADUs again. And many of the landmark districts do allow for these. And I think Curtis Park is a great neighborhood, and I'll get into that a little bit more here. Just showing you my map is a little bit outdated. We have seen Councilwoman Sandoval and a couple other council people working on changing the zoning in neighborhoods like Chafee Park, for example. So my map here is not 100% up to date because those are some pretty recent changes. But as you can see, this is the city of Denver. Anything in color here is the neighborhoods in Denver where the zoning does allow for ADUs. And as you can see, it's a little bit like a checkerboard. So it can be a little bit challenging to know if your zone district does allow for ADUs or not. In the Curtis, I want to take a quick look at the Curtis Park zoning. And I think that Curtis Park is a great example of what we can do with zoning and building in historical neighborhoods. Joel Noble in 2010 really had the foresight of putting a conservation overlay in place for the Curtis Park neighborhood that allows a full 2 stories to be built, no bulk plane, a higher lot coverage percentage. And this is very different than what we see in a lot of other neighborhoods in Denver. And one thing I want to point out to you, if you do live in Curtis Park or maybe in the Baker neighborhood, and you are in that URH 2.5 zoning, that's great. Your property is zoned for it, but there are other pieces of this that we do have to take a look at to make sure that your lot size is big enough, that you're not over on your lot coverage. So knowing that your zoning allows for it is one piece of it, but we do have to go into that a little bit further to see if you're allowed to build one. This is an ADU that we built over in Curtis Park. This was on California Street. So as you can see in this picture on the top here, this is a full 2-story ADU. Now, the way you can tell that is the walls here go straight up, where in a lot of other areas in Denver, you'll see the second story will be squeezed in a little bit. This was an ADU that was built probably about 3.5 years ago. It's hard to keep track of time right now, but I think it was about that amount of time. And I think that they did a really good job with connecting this ADU to the form in their house. And as you can see here, just like the size of the windows, the spacing of the windows, that's always something that Landmark really looks at to make sure that our spacing and our window sizes are right. And then, of course, the things that we see, whether you're replacing your windows or siding or anything like that on your home in a historic district, is the same thing that they're going to be looking at when we take a new project through. This is another ADU over in the Baker neighborhood. We just finished this one up, and I think this one is a great example of what you can do in a landmark district. This was a design by Ozzie Friedrich, and yeah, we just finished this one up about a month ago, so I think it's a very sharp looking ADU. This is another project back in the Curtis Park neighborhood, and I went over today and snapped a couple pictures of it. We're finishing up construction on this one, so we still have our temp fence up, but tried to get as good of pictures of it as I could. So this is another full 2-story. So I'm just going to go back here. So looking here in the Baker neighborhood, currently we can only build 1.5 stories. And as you can see, where the roof line here on this side comes down a little bit lower. So that's going to be cutting in on that living quarters up above. You can also see it here on the top. And then right here where this door is where the stairs go up. So I think Ozzie did a great job with fitting within the parameters of that 1.5 stories to build this ADU. And one thing I did want to mention, I think it was on my previous slide, is on let me just go back here. The Baker neighborhood is looking at possibly doing a conservation overlay. And if anybody lives in the Baker neighborhood or is interested in knowing more about this, I recommend reaching out. I have the email address up on your screen right now, reaching out to them, getting more information on it. They're developing that overlay right now. So would definitely recommend people who are interested in reaching out on that. This is another ADU that we did. This one is not in a historic district. This one is over in the Whittier neighborhood. I wanted to show a couple of shots of the inside as well. I think that, adding some of the skylights to this project let in quite a bit of light and also gave privacy to the neighbors and then also to the front house as well. All right. So I have up here just my contact information. Again, I work with L&D Construction, and have a pretty active Facebook group. Feel free to take a look at our website for a lot more photos of different ADUs. I think, Allison, I'd like to open it up for some Q&A if we have any in the.
Yeah, that sounds great. We don't have any parked in there yet, but let's give folks just a chance to get their questions in there.
Okay.
This is a great opportunity if you have kind of responses to Sarah's presentation. Brian said it was amazing information, and I want to thank you. It sounds like some of those photos you got for us today, so we are getting the most up-to-date footage, so I really appreciate that. I think some of those interior shots are just so cool because you can really see what you can from the exterior, which is, you know, that it is a livable space. Diane was asking you to just clarify what you mentioned about the big change that happened on July 1st to some of those.
Sure.
I think was to zoning.
Yes. Yeah. So on July 1st, City Council adopted, it was a text amendment bundle that went through, and quite a few different changes to the zoning code. And the new updated zoning code was just published on July 1st. And a couple major things with ADUs that they looked at is how they're looking at the size for attached ADUs. There were some discrepancies. I think it wasn't the intent initially of limiting the size of an attached ADU that you could have. But once we got that out into the field and you start working through the code, then you start seeing that there are more restrictions on that. And so there were some clarifications around attached ADUs. Another huge one that we saw is if you're building over 17 feet tall, so if you're doing a garage with living quarters up above, we had to be pushed to the south setback. And we had to be, depending on your lot size, we had to be either 3 or 5 feet away from the south setback. So that is something that with this text amendment bundle that they got rid of. So that now allows ADUs to be centered on the lot or pushed to the north side if that's what works on the lot, which this I think was a huge change. And I think it was a really positive change that we saw because of we have to build within the bulk plane. And just to explain quickly what the bulk plane is, it's this imaginary box on the back of your property where you go 10 feet up in the air from your side setbacks, and then you go at a 45-degree angle to the height limit of 24 feet. And we have to fit the ADU within this box. And so when we were pushed to that south setback, we got some kind of funky roof lines because of that. And so by centering it, I think that we're going to see a lot better looking ADUs, quite honestly. So that was one of the big changes. Let's see, I'm trying to think of some others. I think those were some of the major ones. Some clarification in like the GMU zone district, and I won't get too far into the weeds with that, but there were some sidewall height challenges with ADUs, and they cleared some of that up.
So it sounds like they actually cleaned up some of their red tape, which is a good sign, right?
It is. It was definitely a step in the right direction, for sure.
We have a few questions in the chat now. So
Okay.
if zoning isn't allowed or doesn't allow for an ADU, how difficult is it to rezone your property?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So let's see, I guess it's coming up on about 2 years ago. The new comprehensive plan in Blueprint Denver was also adopted by City Council. And in that plan, they talk about allowing ADUs by right throughout all of Denver, and also having ADUs where they can be accessory to a duplex or a row home. And so now what's going to have to happen is that is going to need to get implemented into the zoning code. I think we're still couple years out from actually seeing that happen. But because that plan was adopted, it's a lot easier to do a rezoning on your property to allow for an ADU. So it's about a 6 to 8 month process. There's a pre-application form that you fill out, and as far as costs with the city, I believe it's around $1,100, $1,200 to go through that process. The majority of them that I have heard about are going through. It's just a matter of going through that process. It's a pre-application meeting. It's a land use and transportation meeting. Then you go in front of the Planning Commission, and then your final hearing is in front of City Council, where they take the last vote on it. As you keep progressing through each of those, you're one step closer to it. So about a 6 to 8 month process to do that.
Okay. Lori was asking, obviously every project is different, but can you give a sense of the typical budget for building a 1-story ADU above a garage?
Yeah. Yes. So right now, given where material costs are, we've definitely seen the price of these go up quite a bit. Most of the projects right now, making an assumption that we're going to have to replace an old clay sewer line, upgrade electric panel, replace your water meter, demo an existing garage, and then rebuilding a 2 to 3 car garage with living quarters up above. Most of those projects right now are anywhere from $280,000 up to $400,000, with, I would say, a bulk of the projects, kind of our projects, most of them being in that $320,000 range.
Okay. And we have a couple questions about occupancy. Occupancy restrictions.
Yeah, so that's going to depend on what zone district you're in. So for folks that are living in a single unit, so like USU A1 zone district, then in order to pull the permit for the ADU, it does need to be your primary residence. If you're in some of the higher density zoning, like Curtis Park or the Baker neighborhood, where we see the URH 2.5 or TU zoning, 2-unit zoning, then it can be an investment property, and then you can rent out both of those separate. Now, if for somebody who is maybe looking to do a short-term rental, you do have to live in the primary home. That does have to be your primary residence in order to use that as a short-term rental. And that doesn't matter what zone district you're in.
I see. Okay. And then Brian was asking if your company works with the city and deals with all aspects of getting a project approved.
Yeah, we do. We work with clients in different ways. I have people who come to us, already have plans in their hands, and we'll build for them. We do really like to work with clients from the very beginning, working alongside the architect through design, getting through the landmark process, and then also through permitting with the city. So I think that because of how many projects that we've taken through, I think that there's a lot of benefits to working with us from the beginning of the project.
Wonderful. Excellent. Well, we probably have time for one more. Okay. There are a couple more than I haven't been able to get to. So I didn't know, Sarah, if you have an extra minute, would you be willing to just answer a few in the chat when we move to the next speaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, for sure.
Wonderful. That would be perfect. And then, sorry, let me, here's Leslie's question. Are you seeing more container builds on top of existing carriage houses or garage structures so that the character of the original structure can be preserved?
Did you say container?
Yeah. And actually, if you want, Leslie, I don't know if it's not clear, Leslie's here on the call and maybe she can.
Okay. Yeah. It's the one thing that I find with the container homes is because of the zoning code in Denver, it's really challenging to get a container home to work. Personally, I haven't seen a whole lot of them. I know there are some companies out there that have been talking about that, trying to get that through, but they're, because of the bulk plan, like we talked about earlier, the 1.5 story rule, there's definitely some challenges with that. And then as far as keeping with the, the character of the neighborhood, the design on the front house, yes, when we're working with the landmark district, they are looking at that front house and how the back houses, or the ADU is going to tie in with that. So trying to pull in some of the details as far as the windows, but really that varies from one client to the next. I have seen in some of the landmark districts a very different ADU being built than the main house. So we do see a little bit of both.
Very cool. Well, Sarah, as always, thank you so much for your time. This has been super informative. She's going to answer a couple extra questions in the chat. So if we didn't get to you, she is happy to answer those now. So we do really appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to invite our next speaker to join us this evening. So our second session is going to be led by Lindsay Newbegin. She is an architect and resident in the Williams Driving Park Historic District. She moved to Denver in 2018 from LA with her husband and 3-month-old daughter, and they bought their house, which was built in 1905. The house was in desperate need of renovation and repair, which included an addition in the back of the house. And that's kind of what she's going to focus on for us tonight. In her professional life, Lindsay designs office and building repositioning projects. The project that prepared her the most for owning an old house in a historic district and adding on an addition was the restoration of a historical Masonic temple and conversion into a modern office. Today, she's going to walk us through her landmark proposal for her house and touch upon some of the lessons she learned when adding an addition onto your home in a historic district. So thank you, Lindsay.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
All right. Well, as Allison mentioned, well, first, can you see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
we see original 1905 edition 2020 in a black screen with white.
Okay, great. So as Allison mentioned, I'm an architect and my focus of work is primarily on corporate building repositioning projects and corporate office interiors. So adding an addition onto my own house was probably the most challenging project of my career, believe it or not. And in 2015, I had a great opportunity to work on this project, converting a 1928 Art Deco Masonic temple into a modern office building. And I'm sharing this with you because it was pivotal in forming my approach to adding a modern addition onto my own 1905 house. The transformation was a timeless balance between the modern and the historical. And while the original structure was closed and dark with windowless space, we were able to restore the street-facing facade to its original glory and modify the non-street-facing elements and interior of the structure to accommodate a modern office building. And then this is the final outcome. And I know we're not here to look at my project work, but I wanted to share it because, as I mentioned, it was pivotal in preparing me for my approach to this beauty that my husband and I took a leap of faith with and purchased in 2019. It was built in 2005 and in a lot of disrepair, both outside and inside. So we transformed it, much like the Masonic temple, to be a modern home that balances and respects the historical. This is very much a project with many phases, and they're still to be completed. So I just want to point that out, but I'm going to walk you through my approach with this first phase, where we renovated and modernized the interior of the original structure, and we added on an addition in place of a dilapidated 2-story wooden porch. So the addition is located at the rear of the site. What you can see here in red or dark pink is the addition. The light pink is the original house structure, as well as the light pink carriage house located in the rear. On the ground floor, the addition provides us with a mudroom along with a closet and laundry and access to the basement. On the second floor, it provides us with an extra bedroom and closet. I should mention the total square footage of the addition is, the footprint is 128 square feet. And part of the project included replacing windows on the front of the house that were replaced by previous owners and not matching the historic character. So we replaced them with windows to match the character of the house. And this is the front street facing facade. This is the side elevation. You can see the windows here in the bay on the front of the house, but back here is the addition. And the material is a standing metal seam in keeping with the rhythm and verticality of the bead and board material of the previous wooden porch. And I'll show you photos of the previous construction in a moment. But the material runs continuously up the sides and over the roof in a continuous gesture to create a gable roof, which is in keeping with the existing structure's gable roofs. The large window on the second floor was designed to follow the form and to celebrate the gable form in a simplified way. And the other windows in the addition are low profile metal windows to coordinate with the language of the new construction. And they're carefully coordinated with the dimensions of the existing windows of the original house as well. The addition is meant to be recognized as current construction and not meant to try to mimic the historic structure or methods of construction. And then this is another side elevation. I probably should have pointed out, this is my landmark submission that we're going through. So here are the photos of the house on the front side prior to introducing the new windows in the bay. But here are those old windows that were not conforming and did not coordinate with the character of the house. And then this was just showing that looking on both the left side of the house and the right side of the house, how the addition is not very visible from the public right away. You can see here in this proposed 3D that there is a little sliver of the addition that you would be able to see from the street. And then these are photos of the original two-story wooden porch, again with that bead and board material that is mimicked in the standing metal seam in a more modern way. And then over here you can see this is the brick, a close-up of the brick of the house along with the material of the standing metal seam. And historic precedents were provided to give examples of additions to historic brick structures that using standing metal seam material to complement the historic material and to clearly be recognized as current construction. And this allows the historic structure to stand out, similar to the approach that we took with our construction. These are photos of a house in our neighborhood, and then other projects that were approved by Landmark. And you may recognize Cuba here, kind of taking on a similar form that we took. And then these are other historic precedents, not neighborhood precedents, but just showing how the standing metal seam can complement that historic brick. And this project here on the right is the one that really inspired me in our project. Here's a photo of the before and the after. So we really wanted to take the approach where we restored the street-facing facade to its original historic glory, and it elevates the historic fabric of the neighborhood. And the new construction on the back of the house is a sophisticated and thoughtful design that is compatible with the existing structure and in keeping with the existing fabric of the neighborhood. And then here are some photos of the interior. This is on the ground floor of the addition. This is looking back at the original door into the kitchen and brick wall. And then this photo over here shows our closets and laundry on the right-hand side, and then stair going down to the basement. And then this is on the second floor, showing that large window that is in keeping with that gable form and honoring that. And then this is looking back at the original structure. These are just some photos of the interior of the original house and how how details were preserved, like woodwork, the radiators, the wood floors. And then this is the ground floor, looking at our back at the stair going upstairs, new kitchen, and then living area. So I just wanted to walk through a few kind of lessons learned or tidbits that how I approach my project. So this idea of old versus new, you may have heard me say it a couple of times, but to clearly recognize where the original structure stops and where the new construction begins. That was my approach, and it was not to mimic old, but to complement it with a modern material. And this was true for both the exterior and the interior. And then I think any house project is can be daunting. And especially when you have extra layers of approvals, such as landmark approval and building department approval, it can add a lot of stress and anxiety. So my recommendation is to give yourself enough time during the planning stages and to provide, or prior to construction, and to go through all the process of approvals. You will need approvals for landmark and building permit, which both have processes that take time and possibly multiple iterations to get final approval. And I also want to recommend that you familiarize yourself with the design guidelines provided by Landmark prior to designing your addition. And make sure your architect or designer is familiar too. Try to make sure you include all elements that will be visible on the exterior, including vents, mechanical units, light fixtures, site work, and make sure your drawings match what you submit to the building department. When it comes to final building inspection, the inspector will be looking to make sure the final built product matches the permit drawings. And those drawings also have to match the drawings submitted and approved by Landmark. And then my final piece of advice that might help minimize the daunting process is to view your relationship with Landmark as a partnership. Schedule time to meet with the person who's assigned to your project and work together to understand what will be acceptable to Landmark. There may be some give and takes, but I found it very valuable to meet with Landmark staff to talk through the design of the addition. And they let me know what elements or what materials to pay particular attention to. While they're not the ones making the final decision, they are the ones who are making the recommendation on your behalf on whether or not your project is approved. Also, try to attend the landmark meeting when they deliberate on your project, and be prepared to speak to why your project should be approved. Your landmark representative will present it for you, but you will be given the opportunity to speak about it. And that is the only time you're allowed to speak, however. And I don't know if it was helpful in any way, but our neighbor was actually kind enough to come and speak in support of our project as well. So I hope that describing my thought process and approach to adding an addition onto your house was helpful, and that the lessons learned will be helpful to you. And I'm sure there are many questions you have that I have not addressed. So I'd like to open that up now.
Awesome, wonderful, Lindsay. Thank you so much. And I do think the first person perspective is always really helpful. If you came to our historic home roundup last year, we did have the city present on additions, but sometimes I just think seeing a case study and hearing somebody's personal experience just makes it so much easier to comprehend than you know, some kind of them explaining their roles and everything. So if you guys do have questions for Lindsay, this is a great time to park them in the chat. We've got a bit of time reserved for her to just answer those and go in depth on this project that I'm sure was a labor of love for her. Did you guys live in the house while you were doing all this work? No,
oh,
okay, I was
not.
wondering.
Well, actually, I have to say, we moved into our house 2 weeks before stay-at-home orders from in 2020, and the addition was not complete yet, but that was okay because we could close it off from the rest of the house, and that was completed throughout the year.
Yeah, and now you've really had an opportunity to see how your house works, right? Very up close and personal.
Absolutely.
Lori had a question she put in the chat. She's asking, you're an architect, but did you talk to other architects and how did you make a budget?
Well, no, I did not talk to other architects. So we were new to Denver, and I honestly don't have a network of residential architects. Actually, I take that back. I did speak to an architect who helped me through the building permit process, but they did not really guide me through the landmark process. But the building permit process, that was extremely helpful for. And how did I establish a budget? Quite frankly, we just wanted to do the right thing. We kind of didn't care what it cost. It's really awful to say, but we decided that scraping that old wooden porch was the right thing to do, and adding a little bit of square footage that was more usable for us was the most valuable thing we could do. So I'm not really sure if I am answering the question, but I'm not sure we created a budget, except for talking to our contractor who helped us understand what he thought it would cost, and then we were able to determine whether or not we could move forward with it.
And you know, was the size of the addition you were able to add, was that kind of your choice in terms of its size, or was that constrained at all by zoning?
That is constrained by zoning. I'm just going to show you the site plan again. This is a lot of gobbledygook, but this line right here, I don't know if you can see me draw that line.
Yeah.
It's the zone lot depth line. And so you can see here that we had to stay within it for a two-story structure.
Got it. That makes sense. Let's see. Anybody else have questions for Lindsay so far? And Lori, feel free to add a little more if you wanted any more clarification on your question.
Yeah, please.
So now since you've been there for a year, do you want to tell us kind of just your feeling of what the addition added to the house, what it's like to live there?
Well, so I am extremely grateful to have a mudroom going through the winter season. And I have a very young daughter, and having laundry on our ground floor is extremely valuable. So it's, you know, the space that it provided is so valuable, as well as the bedroom housing guests who, family who likes to come and visit us in Denver. And I'm just so like grateful and thrilled to have, to have this house and to be able to add this addition on as well.
Yeah. Was there anything that you wanted to do that you kind of found was a restriction? Or is this kind of your vision?
From the addition perspective?
Mm-hmm.
No, so I mentioned make sure you have included all elements of the project in your landmark approval. These light fixtures, I had planned for a different light fixture and they were not included in the original submission. So I did go back for that approval when we were trying to get our final inspection. And they were not approved by Landmark. And I think that's the only thing that I had to make some modifications on.
Okay. And then there was a question, who made your replacement windows? They're beautiful.
Those are Kolbe, Kolbe.
Okay.
And Kolbe did both the historic looking windows as well as the modern windows. So they have two different lines. And the ones in the front are custom to match that diamond pattern. But it is from their, I think it's called a historic window collection or something like that.
Gotcha.
And the windows in the addition are metal on the exterior, but they're wood on the interior. So it doesn't feel, like a commercial project on the interior in any way.
The interior. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. There is Lori, actually, she added more to her chat, and I'm wondering if you have a minute, if you don't mind responding to her in the chat, just to allow us to move to our next little piece here.
Sure.
If that works for you. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Because I want to introduce Trishelle. And sorry, Trishelle, let me give you the opportunity to share your screen. Trishelle works for Rezdox, and they are our sponsor this evening, but it's also a tool that we thought you guys might find really interesting. So I'm going to let Trishelle spend a few minutes telling us what their product is.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight, and thanks to Sarah and Lindsay for your presentations. It was really great information. We're so excited to introduce Rezdox. We started our company about 10 years ago, and so we're now just getting to the point where we're ready to market it and get it out into the world. So kind of our Rezdox was actually the beginning of this binder. When we were first-time homeowners, we actually were able to buy new construction, and we didn't know what we were doing. So we kept everything into our binder. And we just realized that becoming a homeowner is really complicated. And we just believe that you shouldn't be an expert to understand your own home. So our goal is to empower homeowners so that we could deliver innovation and make sure that you have tools so that you can manage your most important asset. So kind of think of us like Carfax for your home, where we're going to allow you to digitize your home's history so that you can track your home improvements and your investments. So I think everybody is pretty familiar with, if you've bought a home that's not new, you don't know the history of that particular home. So we need to start breaking that cycle of mystery. So what I mean by that is, on average, most of your homes are 50 years old or older, and the average homeowner will live in a home for about 13 years. So if we were considering that, it takes about 4 different buyers to live in that home during that period. And from the time that you have your builder to your original owners, you maybe have some maintenance, upgrades, maybe some home improvements, some renovations. But during that entire time, where is that information transferred? Where does it go? So I wanted to show you or highlight one of our many features. This is our home history log, and there's 2 things that I really wanted to emphasize on this page. So the first is that as you're tracking your home improvement or maintenance projects, we are capturing the value of those items. Sorry, my mouse is slowing a little bit. Over here, and then we're accumulating the total so that you know how much you've invested in your property. But on top of that, we're actually creating an ROI, or calculating in the back end with our algorithms how much you've gained in equity based on the project type and the age of the product, including depreciation. The other item that I wanted to point out on our page is we also have considered the average useful life for some of your home's major components. So we've created what we call rules, Rezdox useful life score, and we've color coded it like a traffic signal. If you have a project that's green, that means it's nearing, it's at the beginning of your life cycle. If you have a project that is yellow, that's in the middle of its useful life cycle. We recommend a service as needed. And then if you have a project that's red, that's nearing the end of the useful life or it's expired. So we definitely recommend that you hire a professional or start budgeting for replacement. So I'm just going to dive a little bit more into the home history log so you can see all of the details that you can capture. This is our summary page, and this will provide your contact or your service provider information. And then all of the links that we have that are in hyper green will allow you to click through. So for example, when we get to the products and materials page, we don't limit the number of products that you have for any particular project. So if you wanted to, you could respectively go to those individual websites. Digging a little bit more into the products and materials, we're able to capture as much information as you want to present, including those websites that I had mentioned, model numbers, serial numbers, your colors, your dimensions, even warranty information. And then finally, and I think most importantly, we provide a document storage for each project so that you can upload your photos, your invoices, images, and then of course, video as well. So overall, for our current users, the average home value is about $620,000. And over the lifetime or the projects that they have entered within Rezdox, they have invested about $25,000. That includes both maintenance and improvements. They've captured about 49% return on investment. Just keep in mind that that may seem a little bit low, but if you're investing in maintenance, that's not going to provide a return on your equity or provide equity gain. But the cool thing is that by calculating and documenting your interior improvements, our homeowners have been able to capture over 2% of equity growth compared to the Zillow's estimates that we show within our platform. So I just wanted to talk about our products and pricing. The cool thing is that we've currently been running on a freemium model. We're going to upgrade on August 1st. So if you guys like the idea of Rezdox or just want to take it for a spin, this is the time to do it, because on August 1st, we're going to start charging. For homeowners, you would receive the following features, and it would be $45 per home. It's a flat fee, no subscription, no monthly service fees. And if you are a real estate related business, a realtor, service provider, architects have been on the call. If you wanted to advertise your business, then we charge a one-time setup fee. But again, currently until August 1st, both memberships are currently free. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to contact us. My co-founder, Damian Spencer, will be available during the tour tomorrow, and he'll be able to meet some of you in person. So thank you.